There's a lot. There's a lot. At least when it comes to the actual practice and what everyday paganism can slash does look like. When it comes to media that is interpreting or reinterpreting myth or depicting the gods in a more story focused structure, then I totally give all creative freedom to the creators, storytellers. I'm a fiction writer myself and take liberties with the elements of myth that I put into my stories. I don't intend any ill with what I create, and I think a majority of creators are the same. Some research should go into things like that, but in general, I don't like getting all butthurt over how Hades is depicted or the various Christianizations of the gods that can occur. It's all storytelling. I do acknowledge the entertainment media can shape how the general public sees and comprehends if it is shown often enough, but it gets a slide for now from this fiction maker. What I do have a problem with is how paganism is portrayed and talked about in educational media. Unless that media is made by a practitioner or takes lengths to be as unbiased as possible, then it tends to either see through a Christian lens and compare slash demonize paganism, or it oversimplifies the great spectrum of practice and belief into a narrow, this is how this is type narrative. Which, to an extent, I understand, because paganism doesn't in general have an organization or a set of rules everyone tries to follow. There's no real official equivalent to the Bible or priesthood, and there's very few temples to speak of. My issue is in educational content that distorts things to seem like it applies to everyone. I'm going to focus on Hellenism, but I think it can apply to the rest of pagan religions in some way. For how popular and widely known and taught the Greek myths are, Hellenism isn't really talked about much. Hell, it was about 6 months after I started praying to the gods on a whim that I found out modern Hellenism was a thing. I just didn't think it was a thing and that I was just being weird. And now, 7 years later, there's still isn't a lot of material on Hellenism and the religion itself. And most of the documentaries on mythology I found tend to see it through a Christian lens and consider it a deep literary analysis. Aliakai and Fel the Blithe's channels on YouTube are wonderful and have good information when it comes to modern recon stuff. And videos like Vice's couple videos on Hellenism and the documentary I Still Worship Zeus are a couple great explorations into Hellenism. In fact, that documentary, I Still Worship Zeus, was my entrance into the religion. I hunted down a physical copy of the thing and I still have it. But it's just a shame that those types of educational content are so few and far in between. Greek mythology, Percy Jackson, and Disney's Hercules are often the gateways into people finding the gods and finding this path. But there just isn't as much information on it as opposed to things like Wicca. This can be kind of passed off to us for being rather quiet about our practices and beliefs, as well as society's tendency to kind of force us to be such. The thing is that paganism is so personal. If you had 50 Hellenic polytheists in one room and asked them how they practice and see the gods, you'll most likely get like 75 different versions. So it's a Sisyphean type task to properly represent paganism well. You're bound to offend someone or misrepresent someone's personal beliefs and practices. But instead of talking about what paganism isn't, yield me some time so I can explain what paganism is for me. Paganism isn't exactly cinematic or spectacular to witness because often it is just in your head or in little everyday looking tasks. It's finding the magic in the wind and the shadows under the trees. It's feeling a connection to the gods by finding a penny on the ground or rounding up your total at the register to donate to a charity in their honor. Sure, it's lighting incense and doing rituals at an altar with candles and prayers, but it's also the dusting off of that altar, the small offerings placed without much fanfare, and a small inner prayer. It's thinking about the gods randomly on a Thursday or giving a prayer before a significant event. It's collecting things that remind you of the gods and having a collection of random ass objects that make no sense together except for your association with those gods. It can be robes and necklaces and specific ceremonial clothes, but it's also that one jacket you dedicated to Dionysus or that hat you think of Hermes every time you wear it. Paganism isn't as cinematic as the media wants it to be, and that's okay. I think there's worth and true benefit to it not being properly or even widely portrayed on screen or anywhere else. For me, it enables my head to think of the gods and my spiritual path when I'm doing devotional acts and praying, not thinking about what I saw in a movie. It's a slight privilege that my religion hasn't been commodified as a media trope, and I'm grateful that it is still mine. But anyway, thanks for listening.